one later today. So welcome to the West Midlands Meet the Regulator Better Business for All week and this 1 hour introduction session. I'm Stuart Wielden. I've recently joined the local delivery team as local delivery manager, taking the lead for the West Midlands region. We've got a really busy session with a range of interesting speakers setting the scene for the week. I just wanted to run through a little bit of housekeeping for the session before we start. When not speaking, please ensure your camera's off and your microphone is muted to avoid background noise during the session. As I said, we'll be recording the session and showing it again this afternoon, so please keep this in mind when posting in the chat. Please use the chat function during the session for any thoughts, comments and questions, and we'll respond to those at the end of the session if there's time. You can also use the raise a hand function to indicate you'd like to ask a question at the end. Next slide, please. Are we showing the slides, Stuart?
Haven't got any slides yet, Stuart?
No, we're not. I think Stuart's trying to share the slides. There we go. Next slide, please, Stuart. So yeah, without delay, I'm pleased to hand over to Graham Russell, our Chief Executive at OPSS, for a few introductory words.
Well, thank you, Stuart, and welcome to everybody. It's great to be able to kick off this session this morning. As Stuart said, my name is Graham Russell. I'm the Chief Executive of the Office of Product Safety and Standards, and working with colleagues, we are sponsoring this week, and Stuart and colleagues have organised us very well. So thank you, Stuart, for that. Much appreciated. And looking at the programme, there's some very good events planned. I think my job is primarily to welcome everyone to this event and to set out some high-level objectives for you to think about before I hand over to some more illustrious people to speak about some of the key issues and some of the ways that we might take that forward together. I think the first thing I'd like to say is that this is a very good opportunity and it's very good timing. It's a good opportunity because it's building on success across the West Midlands. There have been a number of Best Business for All and other initiatives in the West Midlands. Some of you will know that a long time ago, I worked in Staffordshire in Trade and Standards, and I chaired a Trade and Standards forum across the West Midlands and also a business forum across the West Midlands, where we sought to bring together businesses and regulators to address their issues of common thinking. So a lot of what we've done in OPSS and predecessor organisations over the last 15 years now goes back to work that was carried out in the West Midlands. And I know that, although I've not been involved, colleagues in the West Midlands have continued to work on those themes and to do some really impressive work, often work that has led national best practice and has been picked up and copied by others across the country, if not beyond. And I really think it's important that we recognise that when we start this session. It's not the beginning of thinking about this in the West Midlands. It's actually a culmination of lots of successful work. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that, not only today, but through this week. And I think it's important to recognise that because this is a new era and a new opportunity, but it has to be built on those foundations. I think the second thing to say is this is a very good time to be holding this session, and I applaud the work in bringing so many people together from different local authorities, different business contexts, different regulators, and I think it's really good to bring everyone together at this time. A phrase I used with some colleagues a couple of weeks ago was, we're emerging from a period of turbulence and we're entering a period of change. And I think while it's true that we may well be emerging from some of the more significant and turbulent impacts of the pandemic, it's not the case that we're now entering something that can be naively called a new normal or an old normal or going back to anything like that. We're entering a period of substantial change, and that change will bring with it its own challenge. And I think when we reflect on the last 2 years and we see the impact that regulators have been able to have through their work with business, in helping businesses to comply with the requirements of the pandemic restrictions, but also helping businesses to see the way forward and to work together on the way forward to establish a new way of working, then I think that gives us confidence for the future. Regulators have been right at the heart of ensuring that the UK's approach to the pandemic has been successful and has been achievable and has worked with the grain of how business works. And I think that's a tribute to the regulators. It's also a tribute to businesses. We haven't seen large-scale non-compliance. We haven't seen significant conflict. We've seen people working well together. And to me, that's the basis for the work that we want to take forward through the programme that you're discussing this week. So the last 2 years have demonstrated that level of resilience, that level of creativity, that level of imagination. But what do the next few years hold? And there's all sorts of key agendas in government that I'm aware of, and you'll know better than I do the key agendas locally. But I was thinking about some of those things that are important to my department and to other parts of government, and the phrase build back better. How do we work together to ensure that we can not only achieve recovery, but achieve recovery that creates a better foundation for the future? Levelling up is something that we heard a lot about last week with the government's white paper and big commitments there and expectations there. What does that mean for central and local relations? What does that mean for the role of regulators? What's it mean to level up? How do we do that in practice? How do we move beyond the slogan to real change? And then for my department, which is the Department for Business Innovation, one of our key phrases now is net zero. We're moving towards net zero. What does that mean to move towards net zero? What's the role of regulators in that? What's the local responsibility in that? What's the national responsibility? Is it just a slogan, or is it something that we can achieve, and if so, how? But all of those are big ticket, big picture agendas, and yet we face that with a tighter public spending environment. There isn't a lot of resource available. Consumers face financial challenges, businesses face challenges, and certainly local authorities and local regulators face real financial challenges. So how do we extract more impact whilst we have less resources? And to me, that's the challenge that we face. It's an opportunity, but there's no doubt that it's a challenge. It's not new, perhaps, for local regulators, but it's certainly going to be very significant. If we face these big challenges and these big expectations and these big requirements for change, but we do that with a tighter financial environment, then how do we have to address that? And the answer must be that we need to work better together. And when I think about working better together, I think about local and national. How do we as a national regulator work with local regulators? How do we as national government work well with local government? And I also think about how regulators and businesses can work together, and the role of organisations like the Growth Hub, the Strategic Regulators Network, in creating that relationship. There's all sorts of challenges when you talk about a relationship between regulators and business. Have you automatically and already introduced some sense of some cosy relationship that doesn't have sufficient challenge? What does accountability mean in that relationship? What does independence mean? How can you maintain credibility as a regulator if you have a relationship with business? And yet we know that if we're going to make change happen, we have to work together. We have to work with people. We have to work with local businesses to ensure that the regulatory outcomes are achieved in a way that enables businesses to thrive. Absolutely, regulators have to enforce the laws they're given. They have to ensure that people are protected, that places are protected, that workers are protected. But how do we do that in a way that enables businesses that are seeking to comply with the law to thrive at the same time? And so that's really what we mean by saying working together. And that's what I think is to be explored through this week. The particular theme of better business for all has been around for 10 years this year. And we were celebrating that a few weeks ago with a special event, bringing people together from across the country. So it's a well-proven and well-established way of working. Some of you will have experience of having done that in your own local authorities or in groups or elsewhere in the country. I think approaching that as a region is a really good and thought-provoking approach. I think it enables greater economy of scale, but it will be important to ensure that it still makes impact on the ground with local authorities and local businesses. But it is 10 years of experience that we bring to this. We're certainly thinking about how we work with that in the future going forward after establishing it at this point. we face the same challenges of financial resources that local authorities do, and we'll have less money next year than we've had this year, and I'm sure that's a common experience. But we are keen to ensure that Better Business for All works for local authorities, for local regulators, for local businesses. And so this event, I think, is a good marker of how we can go forward with that. And we're certainly pleased to be able to support this event this week. And I know that Stuart and the team have put together some really good speakers to challenge, provoke, and help that thinking. That's probably all that I need to say by way of beginning an introduction. I hope it's given you a little bit of food for thought, which you can take into the conversations. I don't think I'm around for the whole of the hour this morning, so if there's any questions for me directly, Stuart, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, I'll be around for a little bit, hoping to hear from a couple of the other speakers. But I'm sure if I can't, I'm not here to answer the question, then Stuart will do a better job anyway. So with that, I'll hand over to Stuart. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Graham, and for setting the scene. As Graham probably isn't going to be here for the whole session, if anybody does have any questions for Graham at this point, please feel free to raise your virtual hand. I don't think we've got any virtual hands, Graham, so I don't think we've got any questions at this point. So, Stuart, if you could share the slides again, please. So, as you can see, we've got a busy week planned. We've got a broad range of speakers giving you the opportunity to meet different regulators and business support organisations. As I said, this morning's session is being repeated this afternoon. And throughout the week, we've got differing sessions led by regulators from environmental health, licensing, trading standards, fire and rescue, plus local authority economic development and all of the West Midlands growth hubs. This will give you an opportunity to understand what their range of support is and what their offer and ask is, which will hopefully identify new ways that you can work together. My colleague Stuart Bruff's doing a session on net zero tomorrow, exploring how regulators can support businesses with this. And there's also a session on the Joint Authority Regulatory Service, summarising the work involved in regulation of the Commonwealth Games, which I look forward to hearing. It concludes on Friday with a business perspective with sessions by ACAS, Advisory Conciliation and Arbitration Service, and the Federation of Small Businesses. You can drop into any of these sessions. The agendas that's been emailed to you has got links to these sessions, or you can email us on local regulator delivery at bays.gov.uk, which we'll put in the chat. Next slide, please. So this morning's agenda, I'm going to start the proceedings with a short intro to Better Business for All. But before we move on to the next slide, I'm just going to ask for your input by answering a quick question in a poll, which I'll try and launch shortly. Hopefully that will appear on your screens. Please, could you enter a word, any word that you feel best describes what BBfA is, or what's required for a successful BBfA programme. It's anonymous, just single words, but you can have multiple entries, so please tap away. So we've got partnerships, collaborations coming out, popular, compliance, quality. So I think three of the words there at least are about working together. So if we move on to the next slide, please, Stuart. Thank you very much for putting those words in. Here's one we did earlier. As you can see, BBfA is a lot of things, but as from that poll and also from this diagram here, collaboration is one of the most important key elements of a successful BBfA programme, working with partners in a productive way. Next slide, please, Stuart. So this is a definition of what BBfA is. It's a collaboration bringing together both regulators and other business support organisations such as growth hubs to support businesses and the local economy while simplifying regulatory delivery. Now, I'm a regulator by trade. I know regulators already collaborate through existing networks such as technical liaison groups, safety advisory groups, community safety partnerships, business forums, and BBfA builds on that work and provides a framework and a toolkit for delivery. The key difference with the BBfA collaboration is that it includes a business insight, and now that is crucial that the business voice is included to help shape solutions that support both compliance and economic priorities. Next slide, please, Stuart. So there's a well-established narrative for BBfA, which includes these key principles. BBfA needs to be local. That's normally regional based, often based on growth hub or LEP boundaries. Growth focused, providing support to startup businesses, so established businesses, and also businesses that are struggling. Practical, it's not a talking shop, it's about implementing practical projects so that it's valued and productive. And as we've already said, it needs to be collaborative, building relationships with all partners, utilising the BBfA tools and resources. Next slide, please. So this slide shows how BBfA partnerships and the progress can be broken down to 4 stages. These stages form the basis of the steps to an effective collaborative BBfA partnership. As you'll see on the left, business insights is included, and this is critical to move from the stage 1 up to stage 2. And this is helped by having business representation on the partnership via relevant organisations such as the Federation of Small Businesses, Chamber of Commerce, which is important. And further insight can be sought through a comprehensive business survey. So actually asking businesses through a questionnaire, business questionnaire, or face-to-face business focus groups, and the formation of a business steering group that meets regularly. And then these effective partnership relationships can drive culture change and delivery. Next slide, please, Stuart. So I just wanted to share this quote from Cambridgeshire and Peterborough BBfA, which highlights a benefit of the links generated through BBfA between growth hubs and regulators during COVID. It demonstrates mutual benefits that resulted from utilising each other's network engagement to disseminate information and make referrals. And hopefully we'll have time for a little presentation at the end of this morning's session, which digs a bit more into a similar piece of work by the Heart of the South West. Next slide, please, Stuart. So you may have been involved in BBfA type work before or in the past or currently, or you may be wondering how you can start. So through COVID, regulators meet frequently through COVID cells, and pre-COVID through technical liaison groups and business forums. And these existing groups, they are likely to contain all the relevant partners required for BBfA. And these groups, they want to enhance their relationships with business, naturally. So therefore, developing these to deliver BBfA is a really effective option. It is important to include the growth hub and/or internal economic lead in the partnerships. And there are certain non-negotiables that all groups should have. All partnerships, they need that business insight, that voice must be heard. And there must be a desire for culture shift and collaborative relationship building. Next slide, please, Stuart. So here are some examples of the outputs and benefits of existing BBfA partnerships. I won't go through all of these, but as you can see, they include better knowledge and awareness of business support for both regulators and business advisors. better efficiencies and effectiveness of project delivery and business intelligence, whilst improving compliance and growth through access to tools, resources and funding to support projects that improve the reach of business support services. And my final slide for this brief intro. This summarises the BBfA brand. The foundations on the left in blue, they're the non-negotiables, they're required by all groups. And the delivery and the outcomes in the green and the orange boxes, they can be tailored to local circumstances and provide flexibility to ensure that partnerships are targeted and focused on local priorities. So that completes my introduction. If Stuart can just move on to the final slide. I'll now hand over to Jonathan Toy, the chair of the Strategic Regulatory Network of West Midlands, who will set the scene for the SRNs and show how it links with BBfA and touch on some local priorities. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Stuart. Good morning, everybody. We can move on to the next slide, if I may, please. Firstly, I'd just like to welcome everybody today and those who will listen in to the session this afternoon. And I think in setting the scene in terms of the West Midlands area, our region, our strategic regional network, I'd just like to say how proud I am to be the chair of the West Midlands strategic regional network. In my view, West Midlands is absolutely at the heart of the dynamic, the progress for this country, not just geographically, but in terms of the range and variation that we have across our region, from highly densely populated and vibrant, forward-looking cities to some of the most outstanding areas across our countryside. We have, being in the heart of the country, we have one of the most important logistics networks within England, and we are a connector. We are, as a region, a connector between the south and the north of the country and across to Wales and into Scotland. Our regional network, our regional influence is absolutely significant, and we should absolutely be maximising the opportunities that our geographical presence has within the country. The West Midlands, for me, has the opportunity to drive much of the work that goes on in terms of BBfA and regulations, and we should really be taking that opportunity, working in partnership and working with our businesses to achieve that. If I can move on to the next slide, please, Stuart. The way the strategic regional networks operate is we have a whole range of local authorities that run their own BBfA programs, and within each of the regions, like the West Midlands, we come together through our strategic regional networks. We look at priorities that we have across the region, we look at our skills and our collaboration, and we develop programs working alongside our businesses to maximise the potentials that we actually have. We have a national group, which I'm delighted to sit on, which brings in the chairs of all of those strategic regional network. And I can assure people who are listening to this that West Midlands is heavily involved in some of the work that comes out through OPSS and conversations we have with central government in shaping some of the key elements in the deliveries in the future. We've recently doing some work in terms of construction products through our own influence, and we're driving a lot of that work and that agenda together. Thank you, Stuart. Move on to the next slide. The thing I really want to highlight today is kind of picking up that conversation that Graham started in terms of us being an enabler, and I think that really resonates with colleagues across the West Midlands. You know, we have a really vital role in working alongside business and supporting business in a partnership capacity. We're not a hierarchy. We're not here to try and dictate to business how they should operate. The best way of getting our relationships going and getting the best out of business is to work as a partnership, to recognise that we have a really vital role working alongside our growth hubs, with our chambers, with our Federation of Small Businesses, to really maximise the opportunities and support that we can provide each other. And let's be clear, you know, the COVID response that regulators have had alongside business has absolutely been that collaboration. It's been that partnership. I can count on fingers of one hand the businesses that we've had real issues or challenges. The vast majority that we've worked with across all sectors have wanted advice, support and guidance and collaboration. And I think there's a real challenge for us going forward about how we take that positive relationship that we've built up across our regulatory colleagues, but with business. How do we keep that going? How do we maintain that really strong dynamic relationship that we've been able to establish? Because it would be an absolute travesty if we were to lose that direction that we've set ourselves moving forward. Thank you, Stuart. I just wanted to share a slide that we put together within Warwickshire, which I know I've shared with colleagues across West Midlands. I know this resonates a lot with us as regulators, and it's something we share with our businesses. It's very much a business-facing document about how we work, about how we want to measure the impact that we make. The three critical components of education, compliance and enforcement have always been part of the dialogue that regulators have wanted to have with business. We want to provide the best advice, we want to provide the best information, we want to work with businesses to be compliant. We only want to use enforcement where we really feel that we have to, and we are intelligence led. It was interesting listening to Stuart talking about having that business intelligence that we want to we develop. We are very much driven by the fact that we are an intelligence led regulatory setup, and we want to use that intelligence to respond to the issues and the challenges that our businesses and our consumers are experiencing. Strengthen our partnership relationships and recognise that businesses is no longer solely done within the retail space on the high street or within our industries. It's very much done by a changing and ever dynamic cyber and online presence. And our approach to how we manage the kind of dynamics of a massively changing retail sector is going to be critical in how we move forward, and there's a lot of work we still need to do to understand the actual impacts that COVID will have as we move into that online space. We'll go to the next slide, please. In terms of our outcomes, as I've said already, we want to be part of the dialogue and the solution alongside businesses, and that the view of businesses should be that regulators are there to provide the best advice and support that we can, and we are committed across the West Midlands to achieve that. Delighted to be working with people like Phil from the Growth Hub in terms of how we support businesses, and I think we should be far more open in our dialogue, and I would welcome an event like this which actually invites businesses in to share some of our knowledge and our understanding, because I think it can't be a one-way track, and I think again that's something we absolutely need to be maximising, because our economy is changing. As I said earlier, we're seeing a massive change, not just in terms of how retail is done, but also what the economic landscape looks like. I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. West Midlands is in the heart of our country. We have one of the most important logistics and distribution networks available to anywhere in England. And we have to recognise that as our economy shifts, how we work and how we respond to that ever-changing environment is absolutely vital as we move forward. Stuart, can I go to the next slide? Thank you. Wanted to talk a little bit about some of the priorities moving forward. We've been working very closely with the OPSS about some of their 4 national priorities that they are setting for 2022, 3 and beyond. And that move very much in terms of focusing around product safety. I mentioned about construction products a few minutes ago. There's a big piece of work going on around some of the key headlines around construction products, and we're in the West Midlands are working and leading in some of the work in terms of cladding materials and researching into that. It's a vital piece of work because the whole focus on construction products is not about just the build. It's all about the point from design of the developments all the way through to the maintenance and making sure that we've got every component and every element of that right. Our continued focus on metrology and our role as primary authority. But we've got some other big challenges across the West Midlands. The Commonwealth Games will be with us in a matter of months, and there's a lot of work going on with colleagues across the whole of the region to make the Commonwealth Games a really successful event for everybody to enjoy. So it's a huge piece of work in terms of the management, but it's also a huge piece of work in terms of us as regulators about how we will ensure that all the different elements are in place, that people can come safely and benefit, and businesses can maximise the opportunities that come from the Commonwealth Games. Pre-packaged food, Natasha's Law is going to be a real sharp focus on that within 2022-23, and quite rightly so. There's a lot of work going to think about the kind of businesses that would benefit our support and advice the most in terms of Natasha's Law, and particularly thinking of businesses connected to small independent retailers or takeaway premises that wouldn't necessarily relate to how Natasha's Law impacts on them and their business. Continued focus on harmful products, and as I said earlier, a real energy being put behind our work around net zero. And I know Stuart, who will be leading the session tomorrow, is a real expert in this field. I'm very much looking forward to joining that and listening to Stuart. But a lot of the work around net zero is the best advice we can give to businesses in terms of practical steps they can take place every day to achieve net zero. And I mentioned earlier about sustainability of businesses. Lots of conversation going across with regulators about how do we adapt ourselves in terms of businesses, because many businesses are really struggling. They've struggled through pandemic. They're finding different ways of operating. Quite often we're seeing businesses that are diversifying in what they do in order to keep their business going. And we have to think about how we work, how we redefine how we work with those businesses, and also redefine how we live as well, because much of our moving dynamics in terms of businesses and how we work in regulators is no longer based on office single-use space, and we've got to be alive to that changing dynamic. Thanks, Stuart. So last slide for me, and a bit of a challenge, I suppose, a little thought-provoking challenge for all of us. It's something that we within the West Midlands constantly debate, whether it's through the strategic regional network or the work that we do within Sensor. And I want to put this challenge out there in terms of what does our profession as regulators look like moving forward? And we do have some real challenges in terms of us as a profession or professions. We have some real issues in terms of bringing new people into environmental health, trading standards, food safety, and then retaining them within those professional constructs. There's been lots of debate about whether we move down to things like a more generic role in terms of regulation. And it's something that has been hugely debated nationally, but very much regionally. And I just want to kind of put a case out there, which I think is really valuable at this moment in having these conversations. And it goes back to much of the work I've said earlier. One of the most important things that we retain as regulators is our own professional integrity. And having the ability to draw people together who have real specialisms and expertise across the regulatory arena is hugely valuable. Now, whether that's trading standards, working alongside food safety, working with environmental health officers, or work in terms of the way that we responded to COVID, our expertise, our skills are absolutely vital. And in this dialogue and debate about what does the professional landscape look like, let's not lose focus on the value of that professional integrity across those different professions, and the fact that we need that range of really good expert people who can come in and help resolve challenges for us. We have to invest in the professional qualifications within or the professional career pathway within regulation. It's critical that we do that, and it's a massive call to arms, I think, between us, our university colleagues, and those who are guiding us in terms of the professional dynamics. But from my point of view, that integrity, that collaboration, that combination of skills still remains at the heart about what really good regulators can do by working collaboration. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And I certainly resonate with your final point there that you're making about ensuring we've got a sustainable, competent workforce. Certainly work to be done there. So if anybody here has got any questions so far, please do put them in the chat. We will pause after the next presenter to consider them. But without delay, I'll now introduce Phil Peake from Coventry and Warwickshire LEP Growth Hub and Cluster Lead for West Midlands to talk about how the West Midlands Growth Hub Cluster works. Over to you, Phil.
Lovely, thank you, Stuart, and yeah, some really interesting presentations this morning, and certainly all of it resonates. Let me just pop a couple of slides on screen for a moment. Bear with me. Oops, I apologise. If you don't want to see my emails, that's certainly not what you want to see. Okay, here we go. Right. Just confirm you can see that okay, slide, Stuart, yeah?
Yes, Phil, we can see that, thank you.
Right, okay. As you said, my name is Phil Peake. I'm the Business Development Director at the Coventry and Warwickshire Growth Hub. I've been here since the Growth Hub started 8 years ago, scarily, which is probably why I've got a lot of grey hair these days. I'm actually really speaking on behalf today of the West Midlands Growth Hubs. And there's 38 growth hubs around the geography of England. They're broken up into 10 clusters. The West Midlands is actually the largest cluster in the country. So with 6 growth hubs: Coventry and Warwickshire, Greater Birmingham, Solihull, the Black Country, Stoke and Staffs, and the Marches, and Worcestershire. And we've worked together as a cluster now for well over 2 years, really trying to understand how we can get consistency across the region, how we can help each other improve standards, how we can improve collaborations, and develop the work that the Growth Hub does with all the stakeholders across the region, all the local authorities, chambers, universities, etc. So that's a really intensive piece of work. I've also got a third hat on actually here today, as well as Coventry and Warwickshire and the cluster work. I'm the project manager for a business support review that's going on at the West Midlands, sponsored by the Combined Authority and the LEPs in the Combined Authority area, looking at how business support has been done over previous years and what lessons we can learn from, in particular, the last 2 years, which, as one of the speakers earlier said, has been a period of turmoil and change, and how we actually implement a business support infrastructure for the future that's fit for purpose for the future, and businesses know how to engage and how that they can get the right support at the right time. In terms of what growth hub inquiries, what growth hubs do day to day, what we do is handle inquiries. We speak to businesses, we seek out businesses that perhaps haven't engaged for support in the past, as well as dealing with incoming inquiries. And what those inquiries coming in are, they could be anything. And we've heard some really weird and wonderful inquiries over the years, some fascinating inquiries, as well as the obvious things. In the early days of growth hubs, we tend to be associated with the grants finders. The amount of work we do on grants now is a relatively small percentage of the work we do. We get involved in anything and everything. And our job is to really help understand the business and help them find out the right support that they're looking for. And that support might be the support they've asked for, but often it's actually the support they've not asked for. And I think actually regulatory compliance and regulatory support is, I think I would put perhaps often into that latter category. They don't necessarily think about the implications of, for example, a business expansion or getting involved in new technology or opening new facilities. They don't necessarily think about the implications that might have on their regulatory compliance. I think it's our job to help understand that. We've done a lot of work through the work with BBfA, as Graham said earlier, over recent years, but I think there's a lot more work to do. There's a lot more work we can actually do to increase that collaboration and integration of the services that we all offer. So when we look at it's all of these, it's often we get asked about finance, skills, property, innovation, and so on. There's a whole raft of these, but it's often the combination of things that we get involved in that's where we really start to open up and generate impact for businesses, looking for that's how they're going to change. And I think the phrase earlier on, which I think was a really good one about exiting this period of turmoil into a period of change, I think the new normal is going to be constant change. Prior to the pandemic, the West Midlands enjoyed a relatively stable and good period of growth, relatively stable supply chains. That has now changed arguably forever. We're in a period where businesses need to adapt, they need to change, and they need to look forward and look out for support in ways they've never done before. And interestingly, the business support review, we did an analysis between all the stakeholders across the region, local authorities, universities, chambers, etc., growth hubs, LEPs, and so on. Over the last 10 years, we've actually engaged collectively somewhere around 1/3 of the business base of the West Midlands. So that means there's 2/3 of the business base of the West Midlands that's not engaged with support. Why is that? What are they not seeing? What are they not? They simply don't know where to go. They don't see the value of it. So there's a lot more work to do together. On that point about more impact with less resources, completely agree with that. And that's what the business support review is about. It's about increasing the collaboration between the stakeholders to make sure we actually generate the impact for the region. The West Midlands has got some real challenges over the next few years. How do we work together to actually mitigate the impact of that and actually create opportunity? And I'll come on to the opportunity side in a second. A couple of things that we get involved in, just out of interest. This is a programme that's been running for last year. It was confirmed in the spending review budgets in November. This programme, Made Smarter, will run for the next 3 years. The growth hubs are delivering the support in partnership with the 2 catapult centres, the Manufacturing Technology Centre and Warwick Manufacturing Group. It's available to any manufacturing business in the West Midlands. It's all about digital tech adoption. Fascinating programme and got a really high profile with this. There's 4 pilots across the country that are running currently, and the West Midlands one has been the most successful. So we're looking forward to the next 3 years of that programme, and you can find more details on the West Midlands Growth Hubs website. You'll see at the bottom there. Look at opportunity. That's in the last 2 years, obviously, we reflected on challenges, unprecedented challenges for businesses that we've all never experienced before. But I think we are arguably better prepared for challenges in the future. But also we're going to look at opportunity. HS2 is happening as we speak. I'm driving past roadworks every day now. I'm sure we all seen parts of the effect of that. The Metro Alliance is connected to that, the expansion of that. We're all seeing major council work across the region right now. I'm looking out in Coventry here. I can see several cranes as I speak. There's various public sector programmes going on right now. City culture in Coventry is obviously particularly pertinent to our area, but the Commonwealth Games is happening, as you've been looking forward to that later on this year, and that's generating opportunity. How do businesses find those opportunities? How do they engage with those opportunities? But more importantly, then, how do they change their business to be competitive and able to deliver those opportunities? That's where the business support ecosystem can really help bringing the support together to get them the right opportunity and deliver those opportunities. There's a platform that all the growth hubs across the region are involved in, and this is available pretty much across the entire geography of the West Midlands. It's called Find It In. So it's Find It in Birmingham, Find the Black Country, Find it in Coventry and Warwickshire. Birmingham 22 is on that portal as well. And the West Midlands, the last year or two, there's been something like 26 billion. I think that figure is slightly low now. Actually, I think it's over 30 billion now. Opportunities have gone through that platform just the last couple of years. There's over 90,000 members across that network. The point about the network, the Find It in network, is yes, it's where businesses find opportunity, but through that, they're then engaged via the growth hubs to actually get the support they need from all the partners such as yourselves. How are they going to get themselves in a better position to actually deliver those and realise those opportunities? The facilities on that platform, things like a marketplace, they can promote themselves. There's also an employment solutions platform which we've launched in Coventry and Warwickshire and looking to deploy that on a wider basis across the region. That's where people looking for work and businesses seeking employers can go to. We're doing a lot of work with the NHS right now in our patch, and there's something like 3,000 roles have gone through that just in the last 6 months. So there's some major opportunities through there, and we're looking to deploy that further. That's just some of the points about that. I won't go through that slide now. I'm sure the slides will be shared and you can reflect on that. So that's really the conclusion of what I was going to say, but I think the points really that have been raised earlier about that point, the constant change we're going to be facing, how we can collaborate further. Well, the business support review has certainly highlighted that all stakeholders have worked incredibly hard over the last 10 years, engaging with businesses and supporting their businesses. But it's also highlighted that there's a lot more work to do by increasing that collaboration and increasing the impact that we can collectively generate. So I'm sure they'll be open to questions. I'm going to have to drop off the call very soon, so but I'm sure Stuart can refer any questions on to me if there are any. But Stuart, back to yourself.
Thank you very much, Phil. We haven't got any questions in the chat, so if anybody has got any that they want to ask, please put your virtual hand up now. Yes, Stuart.
I feel it's a kind of a loaded question, but obviously this event is kind of intended for regulators as well as the growth hubs. What would be your biggest ask of regulatory colleagues about engaging with their growth hubs?
I think it's an ask for regulators and the growth hubs, actually, Stuart, is we need to get to know each other better. Down on the coalface, so to speak, is, all that in our growth hub, for example, we've got a team of about 8 frontline advisors. There's 1 or 2 on the call there, I can see. They work geographical patches as well as having sector and commercial experience. But if you asked them and you asked the respective regulators and the local authorities in those areas, do they know each other? They might know each other by name, they might know each other by contact, and may even have dealt with each other on some business opportunities. But I think there's a lot more work we can do on the ground and the coalface to really integrate the services much better as far as businesses are concerned.
Okay. Don't think there's any more questions, so thank you very much for that, Phil. That gives us a real flavour for what the growth hubs do and how the cluster works together, and I think it highlights some of the potential mutual benefits of working closely with regulators. So moving on, we've got 12 minutes left, and I've got an 11-minute video that I'd like to show you before I conclude. At the end, I think Khadija is going to try and share the video. Great.
It's for looking to partnership between businesses and regulatory services. Ours is made up of predominantly trained standards officers, environmental health officers, also the fire service and the police, from literally every one of our local authorities, as well as the counties, because we cover Somerset and Devon, which we have 2 unitaries in, which is Torbay.
Could you just pause this for 1 second, please, Khadija? Yeah, I just introduce the slide because the start of it was cut off. This is a video from Jason Berry and David Hind from the Heart of the Southwest Better Business for All partnership, and they're just going to talk about a real example of the practical benefits from their BBfA partnership during COVID. Okay, thanks for that, Khadija. You can start the video again.
2 national parks. On the business element, we've got the Growth Hub, the LEP and the FSB. And just to give you like a feel for what our LEP looks like, I'll just be quiet. You've got all the members of our partnership. So as you can see, there's a vast array of partners across the whole of the LEP area within the BBfA partnership, predominantly, like I said, trade standards environmental health officers, and their role is to deliver projects across the LEP area, which is what they've always done, of course, until that happened. And so that happened, and all of a sudden everything was on hold. Locally at the BBfA, we decided that we would do something about that, and we pulled together a team, or Plymouth, I should say, give Plymouth credit where credit's due. They pulled together a team of environmental health officers and trading standard officers from across the patch, and developed the Coronavirus Toolkit. The toolkit is got a whole bundle of risk assessments in it, checklists, even down to a sector-specific level. It's been name-checked today. I've heard that, and it's had a variety of different changes over the last few months, and so much so that now we've got a standalone risk assessment toolkit, and we've also got a reopening after closure toolkit. However, before all these different these updates came along, the first toolkit was like, okay, that's great, that's brilliant, we've done a toolkit, we can help businesses. How do we do that? What do we do? How do we get out to businesses? I know they're going to need to know what this is, because it's also so complicated. How do we do it? I know. Let's speak to our friendly one-stop shop at the Growth Hub. So we did. The partnership sat down with David Hind and spoke about how we can work together more than we have done previously, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But if I just introduce David Hind, who could talk about how perhaps he feels the Growth Hub sits with the partnership, it'll be quite useful. So over to you, David.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, I just want to broaden out a little bit and just talk about why, for us, there's benefits in the Growth Hub and BBfA partnership. What does it deliver? Well, for me, it's the knowledge and expertise that the partnership brings that is key to success. It is this that really drives the benefits that we deliver to businesses. The BBfA partnership badge itself, the branding and everything that sits behind it, brings enhanced credibility and reputation. It's a recognition that we are using our collective knowledge and expertise to produce quality guidance for businesses, applying our knowledge to the deluge of COVID-related information for businesses, as Jason's reference is one such example. So through this partnership, we are sharing information and sharing communication materials. We're doing this through newsletters, partnership events and things like that. We're sharing data, such as the number of businesses engaging with important topics, for example, reopening businesses safely and EU exit. We are seeing the benefits in terms of boosted business engagement and stakeholder buy-in, specifically in regulatory and related topics, areas for business that are not necessarily easy to get businesses to engage with. And I'd say as well, we're still learning how to make the most of this partnership. We're doing a lot of things, as Jason's describing, but there's still more to be done. So we're still learning, but we do know the journey together is worthwhile, and I look forward to more work together over the next weeks and months. Thank you.
Thanks, David. I appreciate that. So, having had a long conversation with David, we all agreed that the COVID toolkit would be best hosted with the Growth Hub and use their networks to get us out to businesses. So the Growth Hub very kindly created a web page for it, and then we use that as the go-to place for any inquiries. They also use their newsletters, as well as the LEP being on board, sends it out on newsletters, and social media, of course. And then, okay, right, we've done that. That's a good way forward. What else do we need to do, bearing in mind we have all these local authorities scattered across the southwest, and we've got environmental health officers, training standards officers. Well, we know that they know, and we know, the economic development officers within the councils, and also the comms teams and planning. And so the BBfA partnership sends out a newsletter to its members, its partnership, and say, right, okay, tell all your economic development officers that this is available and this is where to go. Tell them to send it out to their businesses, and then also the comms team. So we were starting to get a bit of a flurry of local authorities using social media and all their links to send it out to businesses. And so it was getting quite an enormous number of hits on the website. But still, we thought, okay, well, that's quite good. But there's 70,000 businesses across the southwest, the great heart of the southwest LEP area. So what else do we do? And so we then just said, okay, look, we know all these organisations that we've been working with for an awful long time: the FSB, Visit Devon, Institute of Directors, Chamber of Commerce, Southwest Alliance. Let's send it all to them and see how they feel about it. So they connected in and said, that's great, we'll send it out to our members, and it was going really, really well. And we said, okay, right, perhaps all the local authority officers could connect up with all their local associations, much like what I've just shown, and much like the animation isn't working. So there we are. So we also sent the COVID toolkit out to all these small, if you like, organisations, local associations, etc. And they were very appreciative of it, and we got quite a bit of traction. So much so that we were co-opted, volunteers is the wrong word, co-opted onto various webinars. So we did a webinar for Exeter, and we did one for East Devon, we did one for the FSB, Chamber of Commerce, and so on and so forth. And what we did, which was quite useful, Plymouth very kindly did a PowerPoint video of how to use the toolkit. So all we had to do was introduce the toolkit and then play the video. So it had a consistent message across, which is very, very useful, and saved us missing things. Sometimes on a webinar you do miss things, like sometimes on webinars you do end up pulling sort of funny faces like I did. So someone did a screenshot of that and sent that to me. So that was quite odd. Just a word of warning, don't pull funny faces. So that's where we were with the COVID toolkit. It got lots of exposure, and we had a lot of hits on the Growth Hub website, and it got sent out nationally. So for us, what's next? Just still business as usual to be done. COVID is this swirling haze of mist all around us. We don't know when it's going to go, and we need to do business as usual. So what we did then was, okay, let's revisit our projects we had prior to that, one of which was one of our strategic projects is allergens, and we've put on an allergen awareness webinar over this morning and tomorrow and next week. We've got one, and what we did, we used the Growth Hub to host it, and the Growth Hub hosting it on their website, and also the Growth Hub's Eventbrite page, which is quite useful because that then enables the Growth Hub to retain the data of attendees so that they can therefore, if you like, give them that wraparound care of business support that is available, not just the allergens webinar. And as you can see at the bottom there, we've maintained that relationship with our partners across the Southwest, so much so that Devon and Plymouth Chamber of Commerce are very kindly actually hosting the webinars on Zoom. So instead of having to go through, as I'm sure you're aware, a lot of local authority processes to try and use Zoom, the Devon Chamber provided theirs. So that's quite useful. They can host about 500, which I don't think we'll break that, but nonetheless, it's very useful to be using them as a partner like this. And then, of course, what's next? It's the B word, isn't it? It's that B word. Although we can't say that anymore. We've got to say UK transition. We can't say Brexit. So yeah, the B word. So as a partnership, we've got a Brexit group or UK transition group, what you want to call it, of various different trained standards and environmental health officers who have got expertise in certain areas. So as notifications come out from government, we're starting to put together sort of toolkits. I'm getting fed up with the word toolkits, but if you like, documents or toolkits. So for example, UKCA mark, we've provided businesses with a walkthrough of that. Exporting products of animal origin, that is a toolkit because there's quite a few links there, but it creates a journey through. And so we're working as a partnership, delivering EU transition resources to businesses, again, via the Growth Hub, so that they can host it and manage that. And we're evolving a little bit with that. So we are working with the Southwest Strategic Regulation Regional Network. And I dare say that at 10 o'clock when you get kicked out of the pub on a Friday night. The Southwest Strategic Regulation Regional Network, to try and expand that and collaborate much closer. So it's not just us doing the work. We're hoping that the Bath, Cornwall and Bournemouth and Christchurch Pool Council will do that as well. So we've started to create some some resources, and the whole area are looking to sort of work together and collaborate together and share the resources and share the manpower for that, or woman power. So I'm afraid that's all from me. Thanks very much for listening. And
right, I hope you found that interesting. The reason we showed that, which is an example from the Southwest, is an example of how BBfA works in practice. There's a lot of BBfA type projects happening in the West Midlands, but there aren't any BBfA groups. So I hope that you found that interesting. I hope the whole session has given you a real feel for the benefits of BBfA and collaborative working between regulators, business support providers and businesses. As I said earlier, it is being re-shown at 2 p.m. If any of your colleagues have missed it, please let them know, and hope to see some of you at the other sessions throughout the week. We've got some great speakers, so please spread the word as colleagues can still dial into these. I've just had a message. I think, yeah, Stuart's just put in the chat the links for signing up for any of those sessions. So that's all today. We have run out of time. Thanks very much to our speakers, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you. Bye.